result. This is, I just can't do anything, right? It's because they haven't worked on themselves even further to get to that point. They get to a plateau. And that's why you got to constantly evolve. That's why it's constantly called a journey.
It can get so hard to wanna wake up some days. Wish you stayed asleep, 'cause it's too much to face. Like the loop repeats.
Good morning, happy new year, and welcome back to the ShiftEQ.Podcast with Alan K. Today's episode is what I would consider to be the Sultan of SWAT, the King of Crash, the Colossus of Clout, of all transformation guidance. Ladies and gentlemen, drum roll please. Welcome to the 5R Transformation Playbook. And by the way, I definitely took a little bit of time to remember that Sultan of SWAT, King of Crash line. If you guys know what that movie is or where I got that from, comment below. And if you don't know that movie, well, you're definitely missing out on a classic. Now, I got to be really honest with you guys. This episode, I've been mulling over for the greater part of a year. Why, you might ask? Why have I been taking forever to create this episode and put it out on the channel for you guys to listen to? Because it's not that I don't believe in what I'm about to tell you, right? It's not that I don't trust that it's going to change your life, because I guarantee it will if you are pursuing a transformation of some kind. But my biggest question was, how do I present this episode? How do I share what I've learned and what I'm about to show you in a way that you believe in a 1.8% chance? Now, what is that 1.8 chance? 1.8% chance, you may or may not ask. Well, given that it's the new year and given that there's a lot of health goals, I've decided to crunch up a couple of numbers and provide perspective to you as to how, well, difficult it is to transform your entire life. So, of all the New Year's goals, 70% of all New Year's goals relate to health in some dynamic, whether that's working out more consistently, losing weight, eating healthier. 70% of all New Year's goals have something of that manner included into it. 23% of all people quit within the first week, and only 36% of people make it past the first month. Now, only 9% actually reach their goal, and of that 9%, 80% will end up regaining that weight or regaining their bad habits all within a year. So if you put that all into math, and I've done it for you guys, that's out of every 100 people that want to pursue some kind of a health-related goal on New Year's, 1.8 people are going to actually succeed in creating that into a lifetime change. So why? Why should you listen to this? Why should you even go after such a drastic failure rate, so per se? Because 1.8 means like 98.2% chance of failure. Whew. Well, I have a couple of theories as to why that 1.8% exists. And the two reasons that I am going to say that 1.8% exists, and it's only down to 1.8%, is two reasons. The first reason is actually the health industry in of itself. You see it all the time. The 6-week program to get to here. Try the supplement to get to this result. Stop eating carbs so that blah, 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 blah. It's not that those things aren't wrong, and it's not that those supplements help you get to your goals or supplement you to get to your goals, right? It's that by constantly viewing things as a supplement or as a 6-week program or eating approach or a technique, it promotes the mindset of temporary patches on permanent problems. You know, why someone constantly defaults back to drinking every single time that they're stressed out and overeating while they're drinking has nothing to do with the diet plan, has nothing to do with a workout plan. It has everything to do with the human psyche. And why is it that we constantly default back to these behaviors? And see, if you ever look at any kind of health advice, diet, workouts, it's all over the internet. All of the diet advice, all the workouts, every single plan in the world is up there. But you see, there's 3 things that actually make a lifestyle change and create a workout, aesthetic lifestyle. It's your diet, your eating. Your eating has to be pure, has to be, very nutrition based, and it has to be consistent. Your workouts have to be intentional and they have to be consistent. And the last one that no one ever really talks about is creating that lifestyle that promotes and enhances both to happen consistently, to happen intentionally, and to happen in a way that serves you into your goals. That third one is the one that nobody ever talks about. Why? Because you start dealing with the human psyche and you start dealing with the emotions and the mentality that comes with transforming your habits. We are creatures of habit. We don't like changing inertly of who we are. So what we got to do is get ourselves out of a frame of thinking for temporary patches. That's the first reason why that 1.8% exists. The second reason why I believe that is only a 1.8% chance to succeed is that people are too fixated on the result rather than the intention or the action of what they're trying to do. For example, one of the common goals that I have with clients that I've worked with in the past, or something like, I want to lose 20 pounds. I want to gain abs. But when you ask further into what those goals are, actually, let me take this back. Let me take this back and make this a little bit more interactive. I want you to think about what is it that your goals are with regards to fitness and health or anything else in dynamic. Now, mind you, this is going to be related towards health and fitness, and I'm going to go into further why. But I imagine there's a lot of other transformations that you would like to make. So I want you to really quickly think about what that result is. The result. Let's wait a little bit. Let's go. Okay, you got it. Let's think about it. Now, let's say your result was 20 pounds. You want to lose 20 pounds over the course of a year. I'm going to ask you, is it the 20 pounds that you want, or is it the confidence? Is it the clothes that you want to wear? Is it the entire lifestyle that you would like to gain that you associate with the 20-pound lighter version of yourself? You see, when you start getting behind why you want to do things and you pursue that emotion instead of the result of what you think it is, that's how you actually start getting to real results, is when you start pursuing that emotion, when you start pursuing that action that gets you to that emotion. The result will eventually end up becoming just, what's the word I'm looking for? Guaranteed. And actually obsolete, because you start realizing it was never about the result to begin with. It was about everything that you put behind that result that is what you want to achieve. And when you make it about the intention, when you make it about the action, the results just come. And the results, it might not be the one that you want, but you'll figure out it's the one that you actually need. It's the one that was actually meant to be. For me, when I started this journey, I just wanted to be 150 pounds. But the more I got into signing up for competitions and being where I'm at with my fitness level, I actually weigh about 15 pounds less than that right now. But my physique actually speaks for itself, especially compared to where I was, even compared to like my other competitions. Now, why did I call this a playbook? Why am I not calling this a guide? Why am I not calling this a headline? Because when it comes to life and when it comes to people's actions, very rarely is it linear. Very rarely is it like, oh, I'm going to eat 4 meals a day. I'm going to just go to sleep at this time, wake up this time. We're not as robotic as we would like to be. Now, we can try and aim for it, which is what we should be doing. But the reality of life is not everything is going to happen exactly as planned. And why I made a playbook is for you to understand that when you start going down these breakdowns, when you start hitting a wall of something that you didn't plan for, What this playbook is designed for you to do and see and be present with is the emotions and the mentality and the thoughts that come with failing. And what this does is first helps you understand what failure really means, helps you understand how to reframe that failure in a way that it serves you. And then it shows you how to continue pushing ahead, because failure only happens when you decide to quit. That is the only time you decide to quit. And I am absolutely certain that if you listen to this and you apply this to your transformation, it will work. It will happen. You will get to your goals. Now, maybe it not be the goal that you thought you were going to get, but I will promise you that it will enhance you and get you your way on there. Now, who am I? And why do I feel that I can speak on behalf of the 1.8% and guide you through this? Well, and bear with me if you guys know my story already. I have lived a life of effectively being a degenerate alcoholic. My time in the Navy, my time being a professional poker player, living in Vegas, being one of the biggest partiers that you will ever meet. In March of 2021, I got to a point where I just got tired of that lifestyle. I got tired of drinking in excess. I got tired of eating in excess and constantly teetering and tottering with weight. I don't know if that's right. But what teetering and tottering, sorry, I'm not over that still. It's kind of funny to me. But I would literally bounce from like 150 pounds, 180 pounds, 160 pounds, 175 pounds. And this constant just teetering and going through a roller coaster of my weight. And I literally got tired of my own fucking shit. What I ended up deciding to do from March of 2021 is take ownership of my health. Get rid of my habits of being an alcoholic. Get rid of my habits of overeating and whatnot. And within 8 months, I was able to complete a marathon and compete in a bodybuilding physique competition, both of which happened within a month of one another. So I literally went from being an alcoholic, eating in excess of fast food for almost my entire life, and teetering and tottering between weight, to literally 8 months transforming my entire life. And now, a year and some change later, I am now in my third bodybuilding competition. And considering that I've kept the result and consistently got myself into a better position than I was, definitely since March of 2021, I posted it on my Instagram, ShiftEQ.Podcast. And it's also, I think, the cover of this of this podcast. It's the cover of this podcast. Do you see the transformation? I would consider myself to be part of that 1.8%. Now, you guys can say what you want. Maybe I'm not part of that 1.8% in your eyes, but this is about to be 2023. I identify as the 1.8%. And so bite me. If you don't believe that, I identify as such. I'm going to use a woke measure and say I identify as 1.8%. So therefore, by default, I'm 1.8%. And if you don't agree with that, I don't know, you're a sinner or something like that. However they try to cancel you today in this day and age. So, but what I'm about to show you, and what about this 5R podcast, is how to overcome the mental and the emotional responses that come with transforming your life. I am going to show it and display it to you in a manner of what I did over that course of a year, to talk about the journey, to talk about all the mental and emotional responses. Because again, although on pictures, and if you're following my journey in the past, it looks like a very linear journey. It's not. I started at 170 plus pounds, 20 plus % body fat. By the time I got up on stage in my bodybuilding physique competition in November of 2021, I was in 134, 135 pounds, single % body fat. But to get to that is not easy, right? And let me preface this with that as well. You could take all the notes on this podcast. You can apply it to your every single day life. But if you don't put in the work, if you don't get over those mental and physical thresholds, if you don't get over how to you have to take action into things and letting go of those results. If you do not put in that work, you will not get the result. Like, this is supposed to be difficult for a reason. This is supposed to be challenging for a reason. Because once you overcome this and you own it, the resilience that you build in lieu of it is why you'll appreciate it. And I'm a very, very firm believer that it actually takes resilience for you to appreciate something and build upon it to make yourself better, right? So now, before I get into this, I'm going to do the typical social media and YouTube thing, which is, if you enjoy this episode, if you get something out of this episode, do me a favor, like, follow, and subscribe, and then share it with anybody else that you think can benefit from transformation advice. So, without further ado, let's get into this. Oh, and here's another thing. You kind of need to learn this in sequence, right? I'm going to give away one of them, which the very last one is your reticular activation system. And your reticular activation system, we're going to refer back to this when I get to that very last step. But reticular activation system controls your entire narrative. If you don't work on yourself in the steps that I presented in, and you get to your reticular activation system, if you don't own all the thoughts and the emotions that become with those thoughts throughout that transformation, you can set your reticular activation system to see nothing but failure. So your reticular activation system is literally filters all the information that you want to see. And if you set it up right, your reticular activation system sees possibility. Therefore, it encourages you into possibility and encourages you to serve wherever you're going into. It serves your mindset so that you are constantly building towards progress and getting to your goals. But if you don't work on yourself throughout the first 4 steps and you get to your reticular activation system, if you approach your reticular activation system, your RAS, and you approach it with doubt, you approach it with impossibility, you approach it with nothing but obstacles, you will see nothing but obstacles. You will not find a way to get ahead. You will find nothing but animus and difficulties because of how you set yourself up. And that's why, you can even see people at the gym. There are people at the gym all the time, but they're just going over the same motions and complaining that they're not getting new results. But and you'll hear them, well, I do this, and this is not getting results. I just can't do anything, right? It's because they haven't worked on themselves even further to get to that point. They get to a plateau. And that's why you got to constantly evolve. That's why it's constantly called a journey. So now, let's get into this. And now, without further ado, the very first R is your results. And even further on to that, it's the reason behind that result. Okay. So this pretty much sums down into what is it that you want and why. So when I first started, I wanted to not become an alcoholic. I didn't want to be fat anymore. I didn't, I was tired of being insecure with the way I felt with my life and with my body. So I started getting into workouts. I started, what are the ways that I can take control of my health and what are the ways that I can build towards what I want? Well, like I said, it's really easy to start eating better and working out more consistently. And what I started doing is finding results. I started hey, if I ate better and I ate more consistently, I stopped drinking as much, these results would happen. And the more I would start working out, the more I started working out more intentionally. It's what got me to my results. And the more I built upon those habits, what originally started as me not wanting to become an alcoholic and me starting to not want to be fat anymore and having real confidence with my life, transformed into, I'm starting to become more consistent. Let's make these habits more consistent. Let's better these habits. And what eventually started happening is when I started working out more consistently, I found out that, hey, if I were to work out in the mornings on a fasted stomach, I would burn off more fat when I would work out. And what eventually started growing into was more habits of working out fasted, eating more with intention, because then what ended up happening is I didn't want to waste this workout. So I started eating towards recovering my body from my workout. Then it became, how do I eat better? Because what I found out is that if I were to continue my drinking habits, or if I were to continue a lot of the fast food habits, the very next day when I work out, I'm going to be feeling like shit. And now what originally started as not becoming fat and taking control of my life and unbecoming an alcoholic became, how do I build upon this result? How do I grow with this process? Then it became, how do I perform in a marathon without failing? How do I then perform up on stage without being in last place? I think the biggest thing about the reason and the result is to constantly being present with why you're pursuing what you're pursuing. Because again, what might start as you thinking you lose 20 pounds might actually be that you just wanted some kind of regimen to stick to. What might present itself as you want abs might actually just be that you wanted to feel comfortable with taking your shirt off. Whatever that reason is, take action in lieu of it, right? But constantly evaluate your why. Constantly evaluate your reason of why you want the respective result that you do. Because now I'm on this phase of it. Now that I'm a year, almost 2 years later from that intention of trying to be healthier. Now that I own a health brand. Now that I have a podcast speaking about mental and emotional health for men. I realize that my message is better received when I fit an image of health, when I fit what other men would consider to be healthy. Because when you start speaking about mental and emotional health, it isn't always as prevalent. And I can definitely tell you a lot of men don't really like speaking about it. But when it comes from an image that people respect and people want to attain, the message is better received. And so now my physical results, how I perform on stage, how I consistently show up and work out, has everything to do with how do I promote my message and how do I serve those who are looking up to me for advice and for help. So now my reason for why I maintain this physique is way bigger than me. It's way bigger than just trying to not be an alcoholic or just not to be fat. It is literally because I am at a stage where I promote mental and emotional and physical health on a regular basis. And I don't want to be one of those GNC people who don't look like they lift at all and trying to tell people this is how you get results. We can say whatever we want about having the right words and having the right message. But I'm big on action speaking louder than words. I'm big on leading by example rather than just telling you what to do. I think those are one of the things you kind of learn with being a parent and having kids. But I'll tell you, who am I? Who am I going to ever be to tell anybody about how to overcome your mental, emotional, and your physical health, blocks or your difficulties that come with those things? If I don't exude some kind of presence that says or that shows that I will overcome these things. And here's another thing about that as well. I got to tell you, I'm still an alcoholic. I still want to eat donuts and fast food and the whole 9 yards. But it's when I can identify that those urges still exist, that those habits still happen. I still want to go grab a drink every once in a while, and I still want to indulge in donuts and indulge in Taco Bell. Crunchwrap Supremes are amazing. I'll tell you, it's amazing. I'm thinking about it. That extra mild sauce, that mild sauce is better than ketchup. Fight me. I still want these things, right? But what I've learned now is, when I'm in a competition, because I'm competing here in about 10 weeks, my goal of winning that competition supersedes any of my cravings. But if I'm not in a season, like let's say I'm not competing in 10 weeks and it's my regular, another thing that I found that's very useful is to not deny those habits and those defaults. And so let's say I'm a little bit stressed out and I want to drink, I still allow myself to have a drink. I will have maybe one or two at most. And so that habit and that default behavior still exists. And that's okay, right? Now, look, I'm not saying do that every single time, right? But let's say you were like me and used to have 5, 6, 7, 8 drinks every single time you had a drink. An upgrade could be just having 2 drinks instead of that 5 or that 7. And so what it's all about, especially with this, and what I'm trying to allude to in this in its entirety, is A, find your reason, find your why, find the result that you want, and constantly make those reasons bigger than your excuses on a regular basis. And that comes with constant evaluation. That comes with constant everything. And then you have to evolve with the process, because I know as cliche as it sounds, the one constant in life is change. So find your reason, find your why. And I'll also, in lieu of that, don't deny who you are. Just make better habits in lieu of it. Now, with better habits, that gets me into my number 2 reason. Now, if you guys listen to my podcast on a regular basis, I have this episode called Reverse Engineering, which is number 2. And it's episode 3.7. But again, since we are aiming this towards what I did to transform over to running a marathon and doing a physique bodybuilding competition, reverse engineering is just that. You engineer things in reverse. And let me explain. So Naval Ravikant is one of my favorite current philosophers, modern day philosophers. And he has a quote, and I'm changing this to fit my narrative right now. But he talks about, the goal isn't to run a marathon. The goal is to become a runner. The goal isn't to have abs. The goal is to become a bodybuilder. And when you start thinking about what that really means, right? It's who we are isn't a matter of that one performance per se, right? I'm not a bodybuilder because of the one time I stepped on stage. I didn't run a marathon just because one day I decided to run. What I did was practice like I was a runner. So I had one of my friends who does marathons, who does races and things like that. She made me a plan of what she does. And I found out that, hey, she runs 5 times a week. It runs in intervals. And then usually the last day out of the week, the last run is your big run. And so because I'd never run more than 5 miles, I eventually started doing that, following that plan. If you guys are following me on Instagram, you would see that I literally had all of my runs lined out by date, the exact mileage that I had to do. What helped with that as well was that I got the Nike Run Club app on my phone and my watch. And so what that did is constantly track my progress for me. And then also while I was running, it showed me and it told me what my times were. And as someone who is naturally always trying to be better, I always try to beat my time on a regular basis. And this kept this momentum. And so what eventually I started doing was gearing my habits towards that of a runner. That included fueling up before runs, eating to recover from runs. And then again, you can't always drink and then have like a 10-mile run the next day. And so what I eventually started doing was just that. And in order for you to reverse engineer it to your goals, in order for you to find out how to build yourself up into these goals, you have to first figure out what that person is doing, your goals. Again, like let's say your goal is 20 pounds. What is that 20-pound lesser version of you doing to be 20 pounds less than you currently are? Maybe that's eating more consistently, eating healthier. Maybe that's working out more consistently, working out better. Maybe it's both, right? But what you got to figure out is what that is. So, what I always encourage is 3 to 4 workouts a day and also eating 3 to 4 meals a day. And what you have to do, right? And here's the thing is people that have consistent results, people that have a consistent lifestyle, this 1.8% that we alluded to, have very consistent habits of eating and working out. And so what you have to figure out with this reverse engineering process is figure out what you're currently doing. How many meals a day are you eating? What are you eating in those meals? How are you working out? How many times a week are you working out? What are you doing in those workouts? Figure out what that 20-pound version of you, 20-pound less version of you was doing. And then you build your habits up until you start mimicking those habits of a 20-pound less version of you. And what you do is, what you find is, the more that you create that habit, the more you start seeing results, the more you start creating better habits within those habits. But you have to create the habit first. And those habits are defined by action. Too often people fail because they put their goals so far out ahead of them that it does not hold them accountable in the present. In other words, if I tell myself I'm going to lose 20 pounds and that's my goal, how the fuck am I going to lose that by tomorrow? I'm not, especially if I want to do it healthy. There's no way I'm going to do that. But if I were to make my goals into, all right, well, I'm going to eat 4 meals today, and I am going to eat carbs in this meal, and I'm going to work out at this time. So now your goal is something that you can literally measure, that's right in front of you. And failure or success is literally measured per your next action. Now, this will take some time. This will take some challenges because, like I said, the eating and the working out is really easy to figure out. The third one is, how do you make it into your lifestyle? How do you create it? You know, for me, if you guys follow me on Instagram, you guys would know that I do a lot of like 4:30, 5 o'clock a.m. workouts, because that is the only time sometimes that I can fit in a workout based on my work schedule or based on everything like that. It is the one time that I can control, and no one is bothering me. No one is getting a hold of me. I have no other obligations other than myself. So it's really easy for me to work out in the interval. And therefore the rest of my day is about how to carry on with the day, but also encourage that habit of refeeding myself and keeping that result consistent, not wasting that workout per se. Now, for a lot of people, I would honestly encourage to do fasted workouts. That's what worked for me. I'm not saying that's going to work for you, but what I have found is, not only is it the faster fat loss, I have a reel about it, but studies have shown that you can lose 3 times as much fat if you were to work out on a fasted stomach in the mornings. Another, since we're talking about creating habits and building momentum, by starting your day on an achievement, on doing something productive, what I have found is that A, people don't want to waste it. And then B, people want to keep that momentum going because you started your day on accomplishment. It's amazing what happens when literally you start your day off with achievement. That little bit of dopamine hit that you end up getting carries you on how to show up the rest of your day. On top of that, you start your day off with being awake. Yeah, you might crash a little bit towards the end of the day, a little bit earlier than normal. But for me, what I found out that helps me sleep better at night, and someone who is diagnosed with insomnia, that helps a lot. Trust. So what really worked for me is not only that. Oh, another thing that I found out was, all right, so let's say I missed a run, right? Let's say like on a Tuesday, I was supposed to run a 6-miler, and then I slept in, or I just could not do it based off of something. What I used to do was kind of go into an avalanche mindset where I missed this, so now I'm going to eat this. Oh, fuck, now I ate this. Might as well go eat this and do that and do that. And what I see a lot of people do is when they get to their plan and they fail at something. Oh, I was supposed to do 4 workouts and I only did 3. I need you to constantly be aware of what you're telling yourself and what you're deciding to go on an avalanche about. Because I've had clients where, man, I didn't get that last workout in during the day. My God, I started drinking and blah, 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 blah. Like, whoa, wait a minute. Yeah, you might have missed this workout. But the week before, you did 2 workouts. Now you did 3 and you're mad about not doing that 4th. maybe it isn't about that one drink. Yeah, sure, you might have had a couple of drinks, but in the past, you've had 5 or 6, 7. Like I said, I used to drink a lot every time I drank. You got to constantly find ways that not only promote you and encourage you to pursue your goals, but also look at it in a way that it constantly serves you. Now, I'm not saying make up lies. If you only worked out once this week and you were supposed to work out 4 times, then you need to start kind of like sit down and evaluate. And in general, you have to constantly sit down and evaluate, but be honest with yourself. Again, what I said at the very beginning, results are not guaranteed. You have to put in the work, and you cannot complain about not getting the results that you wanted if you didn't work for them. And here's another thing about the dwelling on failing. We are programmed to be loss averted, and loss aversion is a characteristic for which we see more problems. We find more ways to destroy ourselves and find vulnerabilities than we do to see positivity and see probability and possibility. An example of this is like social media. Let's say you make a post about something inspirational or something that really means something to you. You might have an opinion or two. You'll have all these like, hey, you look good. Hey, this is great. This is inspirational. Then you get that one comment that says, fuck you, you're an idiot. And you ever notice that like that one comment just glares at you? You got like 20 positive comments of feedback. But this one is what you focus on more than anything else. That is a design of our human being constantly looking for vulnerabilities and constantly looking for things that we can potentially correct. It is built in our system. It is a survivor. It's like a surviving mentality. And in order for us to overcome it, you have to be able to identify that, hey, when you go down this avalanche mindset and you start looking at things that you do wrong, stop, pause, and reflect. Is this where I want to be? Am I just victimizing myself? Or is this a real issue? So, first, we talked about results, the reasons behind that result that you really want. Second, we talked about breaking down your results and your reason into action. And the third one, when you start taking action towards your results, you will, especially when it comes to taking actions that you're not used to, you will run into resistance. And the third R is going to be you'll run back to safety. Now, there's a lot of different ways for which this has been presented, and I'm going to talk about the most amusing way that I found out. And what has been displayed, or what I have learned over certain podcasts and certain internet articles, is that as cavemen, our prehistoric ancestors, there are 2 kinds of cavemen. There was the one that was curious and the one that constantly ran back to safety, ran back to a cave. And so when you see a shiny new volcano, you had 1 or 2 kind of people. The one that constantly said, ooh, look there's a shiny piece of whatever. I'm going to go touch it and see what that's about. And the other one that goes, oh, hey, I don't like that. I don't know what that is. And I'm going to go back into my cave, with my cave family, and cave ourselves in and not do anything until the coast is clear. Now, this happens in variations of our lives. Us getting to a vulnerable moment and then defaulting to behavior, whether that's overeating, whether that's drinking in excess, whether that's every single time you see yourself at your result or your goal, you just deny it and you don't actually believe that upon yourself. This is by design, because when you think about the 2 kinds of cavemen that I just talked about, the one that's curious and the one that runs back to safety, think about which one has a better chance of surviving, which one is more vulnerable to seeing cool furry animals, and then one that says, no, fuck this, I'm going to run away all the time. The latter will probably survive more often than not. And we are ancestors of that constant running back to safety. That's why when we are presented with the new lifestyle or with the new train of thought or a political ideation that might challenge what we believe, we just immediately resist it. All the kinds of change that you are not used to, that you're not predicated in some dynamic, our default reaction is to resist it. And that's okay, as long as you can identify that you are resisting it. You know, again, like for me, what I told you is that every single time I would get stressed out, I would drink in excess. I would eat in excess. What this also made me do is go into what I call an avalanche mindset, where if I do one thing wrong, my mindset goes, oh, well, you're not good enough to get to your result anyways. And then I just pursue everything that I really want to do without any kind of discipline. And but it comes back to this, that no matter what we do, anytime we make a change, we as creatures of habit resist the shit out of it. Now, maybe yours isn't drinking. Maybe yours isn't overeating. Maybe it's just that when you start pursuing something and challenges and shit hits the road or shit hits the fan, you resist it. Then you stop pursuing that change. Understand that it's okay. You not wanting to go any further or you finding yourself losing momentum is natural. You just have to, the only way to overcome it is to buckle up, identify it, be aware of it, accept it, and create action in lieu of it. Again, like I said, you can always make better decisions within your habits. All right. The very fourth one. The fourth so first of all, we got results. We got your reason behind the results. You've broke down those results into reverse engineering. So you broke it down into habits. You have faced your first resistance with your run back to safety because you want to actually just go back to your regular ways, which is okay because we are creatures of habit and we always want to go back to what we know and what we're comfortable with. It makes us less vulnerable. But another in lieu of that, what makes us kind of go back into our cubby hole is your emotional response. I talked about this a little bit earlier in the loss aversion statement. And we pay attention more to the negativity than we do the positivity. That's why on social media, if you ever look at any of the gaslighting articles, they have a title of something negative. This person slams this person. This person's reacts in this dynamic. You'll never see something like, oh, this person encouraged this other person into better possible ways. Oh, he helped improve this, this, and this. No, it's a drastic something. It gains your attention. And that's by default. Again, we look for vulnerabilities. We constantly dwell on the negative. And if I were to be really honest with you, my very first competition that I signed up for was the thought of not being in last place. It's a negative response. That provoked me more into motion and into action than it did saying that I'm going to compete. When it came to that marathon, my goal was to run it in 4 hours because I found that 4-hour mark as above average. And so what I didn't want to do is when I ran my marathon is be less than average. And you can say what you want about motivating yourself through negativity. But if you understand the human psyche, understanding that you respond more to the negative, then you can make it work for you. Now, with that being said, you have two kinds of people that you're going to encounter during this stage. And it's really imperative that you understand this now. So during this point, when you are pursuing a result, when you are breaking it down into action, when you're finding yourself being challenged by your own mental thoughts and your emotions about transforming to another life and another identity, there's going to be a lot of people around you that are going to either A, promote you and encourage you to continue, but I'll argue that the majority of them are going to detract and take away from and make you feel less than for actually making a better version of yourself. Why? Because a lot of people have you in their lives as a reflection of themselves. And when I started making my transformation, when I started making better health decisions, when I started making more money because I was making better decisions cognitively because I was taking care of my health, when I started having better social interactions and I started showing up and building my business, I had a lot of friends that didn't encourage it. They, every time we'd go out drinking, they would kind of push me to eat worse and push me to drink more. Oh, you already have the results, Alan. Don't worry about it. And it's not that they're purposely trying to bring you down. But what a lot of people do is by taking you as a reflection of themselves, they project their unwillingness to hold themselves accountable in that respective direction. Because in general, a lot of people, it's not uncommon to hear someone be like, oh yeah, I got to eat better. Oh, it's all right. I'm going to push to Monday. We tell these things that are going to hold ourselves responsible, but given that 70% of the population is either overweight or obese, you understand that the base majority of people don't actually hold themselves accountable. Now, obviously there's different thyroid problems and health conditions that some people exude, but I would say that's a mere fraction of everybody that actually exists in everyday life. And things that happen conventionally, so to speak, aren't promoting of good habits or good health. When you consider that the fast food industry is over a $300 billion industry, $300 billion a year industry, and that 70% of the population is either overweight or obese, and that number has doubled over the last 30 years, you understand that conventional knowledge is false. It's all degrading. It's not there to help you into better habits or make a better version of yourself. In fact, conventional wisdom keeps you in that loop of bad health, eating processed foods, thinking that you can create temporary patches to create permanent results. You have to understand that how you're programmed right now, how a lot of people are programmed, isn't promoting better habits or better health. And because of that, a lot of the responses you're going to get when you're making changes that go against people's paradigm, when you start creating change in your life that is benefiting you, like eating better when other people are eating cake and you're decided to abstain from eating cake. For example, good example of this. Let's say you're out in a social setting. You're out to dinner with a group of people. Everybody's ordering drinks. And then all of a sudden, like, hey, do you want a drink? Like, no, I'm not drinking right now. It's crazy on how people respond because more people would be like, oh, you're not drinking, and kind of will treat you like you got a virus or you got a disease or you have like an STD on your face. That's literally how people treat you when you're in social settings and you don't want to drink. And it'll almost make you feel like you kind of have to have a drink so that you can fit in that social dynamic. As soon as I started identifying that, it's crazy how many people didn't want to hang out with me anymore. Like we'll be out in some social, like we'll go to a basketball game or something. Hey, Alan, do you want to get a drink? I'm like, no, I'm not drinking. I have a competition. Like, oh, come on. You look great already. Like, no, I don't want to drink. It doesn't serve my goals right now. And all of a sudden you feel them weird because then it's like they feel weird drinking around you as if you drinking now is going to just make me go into full degeneracy mode in front of me. Like, no, it's a choice that I'm making. But again, understand that people will challenge you. People will project where they're at onto you. And if you have friends around you that don't work out, that don't watch what they eat and constantly have bad habits, and you're starting to make a change in that light, it's going to be a challenge working through that with those kind of influences. So I would encourage you to not exactly always share your results, because you could definitely be an inspiration for others, but be aware of who you share your progress with and who you share your processes with. Because if there's one thing about people that are negative and doubters, they will always, always, always find a problem with your solutions. All right. And the very last one. So let's recap and get to this final part of it. You have your results and you have your reason, and you're evolving with those results, and you're evolving with that reason, right? Constantly evaluating, constantly being present. You have now broke those things into action. Like maybe, again, your goal, what started as 20 pounds, what you found out was actually just working out 4 times a week, eating 3 square meals a day. That is how you start breaking. You start working towards that. While working towards those actions, you have started seeing, hey, I don't want to change, but that's your mindset. That's your inner caveman saying, I want to jump back into a cave. Fight that caveman, be better than prehistoric, and create historic results for yourself. I like that. I like that. I like that. That's really good. The fourth one, while you're creating these results, while you're going against your mental cognitiveness of saying that you can't change, you're going to run into a lot of people that tell you, hey, you can't do it. Hey, you should probably slow down. Hey, you shouldn't do this. Oh, why are you doing this? It's okay. You're already over. Ignore them. I don't want to say get rid of them, but definitely work on how much you actually decide to interact with them. And the very last one, as I promised at the very beginning of this episode, is your reticular activation system. Now, let's say you have worked on yourself all the way through. You've created these mindsets. You've worked on this playbook, and you found out ways to create better habits in lieu of your habits and how to promote better ways to serve you. Once you have all of that and you keep working on these kind of things, you'll find ways to constantly approach your goals. For example, something that's a real big challenge for a lot of people is eating at fast food restaurants, especially when that's the only thing that's available, right? Like, let's say McDonald's per se, right? Like, let's say McDonald's is the only thing that's around, but you want to stick to a better meal plan. What a lot of people will default to do, if their reticular activation system is set to constantly see challenges and not evaluate if there's possibility in that challenge. You'll be like, oh, well, I'm at McDonald's, so I just got a Big Mac meal, extra large fries, and a large Coke. Boom. Like, oh, well, it's McDonald's, I can't do anything about it. That's someone who has set the reticular activation system to look at nothing but challenges and submit themselves to that challenge instead of challenging that challenge. For me, if I'm eating at McDonald's because I'm constantly trying to eat lean protein, constantly eat better carbs, or constantly find a better way to eat, what I would do is order a grilled chicken sandwich with the lettuce wrap. And when it comes to carbs, I'll try to get an oatmeal. And if I can't get that, I will go into, like, maybe if I have to have a carb because it's a post-workout, I'll eat half a bun or something of that dynamic. Is it the best option? No. Well, based on what's available, that is the best option. And by constantly pursuing the idea of how to make better options and finding the best option to serve your goals and keep you on track, you will eventually constantly look for action. And I'll tell you, the biggest thing about this reticular activation system, the best way you can overcome any resistance that your reticular activation system might be set to viewing, right? You have to constantly think about, instead of saying, I can't do this, say, if I could, what would that look like? Like, I can't eat healthy at McDonald's. But if I could eat healthy at McDonald's, what would that look like? That's where it's constant reframing. And your reticular activation system, I should have led with this, but why your reticular activation system is strong, it's a legitimate, like, 1 to 2 inch node above your spinal tap. And its main purpose is to connect your subconscious to your conscious. It controls and filters all of your senses with the exception of smell. And again, so imagine you set your reticular activation system to view failure and to accept failure, accept blockades, accept resistance. You are legitimately going to hear, see, feel, and touch. I guess touch is the last sense in that. Reasons of why you can fail, why you're going to fail. And you almost kind of predict it for yourself and submit into that. What you have to do is constantly, if you are in a situation where you are constantly viewing challenges and resistance to your goals in whatever situation, you have to reframe into possibility. Constantly ask yourself, if this were possible, what would that look like? If I were to eat at McDonald's and I were to want to eat healthy, what would that look like? If I wanted to be up on stage, if I wanted to whatever, and this serves my goal to being up on stage and competing, what do I have to do in this situation for it to serve it? It involves being constantly present. It involves constantly filtering out the thoughts that aren't going to serve you. And is this a hint of optimism and constantly looking at the glass half full? Absolutely. You have to. You have to be your biggest cheerleader. You have to finally find ways to be possible. Otherwise, why are you pursuing something that you don't want? Well, all right, guys. I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. I'm probably going to reevaluate this. This is, my first iteration of this Shift Transformation Playbook. And I genuinely hope for any of you guys who are listening to this and using it as inspiration to create that change that we're talking about, that it serves you into your goal. Now, for more information on this, guys, find me on Instagram, ShiftEQ.Podcast. You can also email me, ShiftEQLLC@gmail.com. But I will probably better respond off of Instagram because that's my main social media thing. Also follow me on YouTube, the ShiftEQ.Podcast with Alan K. That's also streaming on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. But that's only if you actually got something out of this episode. If you actually got something to move you ahead and serve your goals. We're going to create a couple more episodes that go in lieu of creating better habits about this. But for the meantime, I hope this gets you on a really good start to get you to where you want to be. So thank you all for your support. Thank you all for tuning in, especially if you made it to this part of the episode. And until next time, guys, deuce. I got to turn this episode off. Sorry. Camera. Stop.